Hello, my name is Taylor Hopkins and I am a graduate student at Morningside College, currently taking the course Instructional Technology. The title of my project was Technology Incorporation to Increase Student Engagement. The problem that I was finding in my classroom was that students were very unengaged during independent work times. I found that they were very distracted and often did not complete the independent reading or work assignments that were assigned. Through my research, I found that there are two reasons that students may be unengaged during independent work times. The first included having a diagnosed disability, and the second was lack of motivation and engagement. Reflecting back, my students are all special needs students and have IEPs, so a diagnosed disability is typical for those students. I also was finding that there was a lack of motivation and engagement during independent reading time. A possible solution to the challenges I'm facing in my classroom are incorporation of technology to increase student motivation. After completing research, there were a few common themes that I found in regards to increasing motivation with technology. The first theme that I found was that technology incorporation increases student motivation. There were a variety of studies that looked at the increase of student motivation through implementation of technology. The technology ranged from laptops, one-to-one Chromebooks, iPads, and even desktop computers. In the studies, I found that most students had an increase in engagement and motivation. There was also a few cases where students increased in test scores. Through my research, I also found that frequent and consistent feedback is required when implementing technology. This means that students will need feedback and instruction when learning how to use the technology, as well as throughout the course. Allowing students choice in book selection is also another way that I found through the research increases motivation. Allowing students choices has always been a way to increase motivation, and this should also be done with their book selection and assignments. There were 3 implementation options that I looked into. The first was digital storytelling, which is where students create a multimedia presentation that combines a variety of different components such as audio, visual, pictures, movies, and written text. They create their own stories and then share them and read them digitally. The second option I looked into was reading text in digital form. Reading electronically of digital text from a computer or other type of screen is what reading text in digital form is. This can be done through an iPad or a desktop computer. The students can read the text, or the text can also be read to them. The third option that I looked into were keypads or clickers. These are used to assess student learning before, during, or after lessons. The students simply select an answer using a keypad of choices, multiple choice options. This is a great way for teachers to assess their students and give frequent and consistent feedback. The choice that I plan to implement was reading text in a digital form. I chose this because there was no equipment required for implementation, and that also means that there would not be any cost. This choice can be implemented in a variety of settings. Like I said, I teach special needs, but my students are also integrated into the general education classroom. So this implementation could occur in a small group setting as well as the general education setting during independent reading times. Another great thing about reading text in a digital form is that it's accessible outside of school. Once the students have mastered how to log in and how to access the books, they are able to do it on any device, which means that there would hopefully be an increase in reading at home and outside of the school. Students also gain skills in operating computers and other technology, which in this digital age is a very important skill to have. The digital text that I chose to implement is a program called Bookshare. During writing my implementation plan, I planned for 4 weeks time of instruction for full implementation. In my implementation plan, I included the materials that would be needed, the goals for each week, and detailed steps for how I would implement and introduce this program to my students. As well as creating the implementation plan, I also created materials that were ready for when I planned to implement. These included a parent letter as well as student expectations for using Bookshare. During my implementation plan, the first week started with introducing Bookshare to the students, setting expectation, and doing my own research to implement it with fidelity and ensure that I was aware of everything that is available in the programs. Week 2 allowed for students to gain access into the computer and begin to read the texts that were available. Week 3 continued with students operating the technology independently and spending more of their independent reading time on the program. Week 4 of implementation was implementing it into the general education classroom. This required collaboration with the general education teacher and the students so that the students would have access to Bookshare during their independent reading time in the general education classroom. I found that the implementation plan was very helpful as it required me to critically think about the different components that I was going to need to implement and the materials that I would need to create and have ready. There are a variety of reasons that an AIP project would be appropriate and a good choice for challenges that you're fighting in your classroom. The biggest reason I found this was that it's research-based. I did a lot of research about different ways to motivate students during independent reading time, and all the literature really helped me to make a decision on what plan was best to implement for my students. There was a lot of research about ways to increase motivation as well as some important tips to keep in mind, such as the feedback and teaching component of incorporating technology. I found that this project required a lot of critical thinking and planning for implementation. It took a long time to think about what steps were going to take place during each week and to create all of the materials. Overall, this project has really been beneficial to me, and I plan to use this AIP process again in the future when I find challenges in my classroom. The implementation plan, again, really required me to sit down and think about all the things I was going to need. It will also be very beneficial that when I do start back in the fall with my students, I can pick it up right away and begin with them. It was also great to do all of the research so that I wasn't doing so much trial and error with different technologies. If someone else has already implemented something and has research on its success, then that is great information for me to use when planning to implement any sort of technology into my classroom. Below is a list of references that were used to create this presentation. Overall, I enjoyed creating the AIP project and hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. Thank you.